Carla and welcome to the Written Word Calligraphy channel. Today we are hanging out in my living room area, enjoying the sun here in Vancouver, which is always super nice. It's quite rare to have this much sun here, so I'm just enjoying and basking in the sunlight. And I thought it would be good to address one of my students' questions about invitation design. She asked me, "Hey Carla, do you think you can list out some of the do's and don'ts of being an invitation designer?" So I'm like, okay, let's make a list, right? Like I went and made my list, and then I realized very quickly that I had a very long list. So today I decided to condense my topic to 3 do's and 3 don'ts, and specifically around the conversation on the invitation consultation. So the invitation consultation is the video call, the type of meeting that you would have at the beginning of your relationship with your client. So they haven't yet booked you. They're still at the point where they're wanting to know more about what your wedding invitations, what you offer. And after this call, you're still going to have to, do some work, such as like providing them a quote and things like that. So it's just the beginning get to know stage of it. And so I have listed some of my do's and don'ts with it. Are you guys ready? What do you guys want me to do first? Do you want me to go with the do's or the don'ts? Okay, let's do with the do's first, the positive stuff. So, funny enough, this is my first do, is to make sure that whoever it is that you're talking to, that they have the same style as you, or like they appreciate the look and feel of your work. I think like sometimes, people come in and inquire about your work, but they don't quite know a little bit about what you do yet. So it's not that I'm like not wanting people that don't like my work, but it's just that it would be so much easier to work with somebody that really appreciates the quality of my work. A lot of times clients come to me either from a wedding planner or a referral, but a lot of them do come from, say, social media, for example, where they've already seen my work. So I know that they've come to me and like, "Carla, I love your work. I've been, stalking you on Instagram for so long," and whatsoever. But every now and then I would have a client that barely yet knows me, haven't yet really been on my website, and have just been referred to me kind of point blank. And so I just wanted to have that quick conversation and make sure, hey, I was just wondering, like, how did you find out about me? Or like, how did you find my style? Is it something that relates to how you look like as well? Most of the time, like 99% of the time, the clients that come to me have seen my website, have liked my work, but because one of my clients came to me, I thought that they really liked my style, or that was kind of they were going for. They kept talking about calligraphy, but then the moment I started sharing my screen and showing my work, they very quickly realized that that wasn't the calligraphy that they were looking for. They were looking for something more traditional, whereas my calligraphy style is more modern. And clients don't really typically know all the different kinds of calligraphy or all the different kinds of lettering. They don't realize that not everybody can do the same style. Just because you can do calligraphy doesn't mean you can do everything. And so we had to have that tough conversation to see whether or not they even like my calligraphy styles before we could move forward. We actually ended up referring them to a different calligrapher for their invitations, but at least we didn't have to go through the pain of wanting to create their invitations, and then they are settling with it because that's not something I offer. And that's why it's important to me that for you to make sure that you are on the same page in terms of the look and feel and the style of the wedding invitations and the calligraphy style that you produce. And second is, do give your opinion on, numbers, colors, styles. Clients, when they come to you, they look at you as an expert in terms of stationery designs. It's so good to be able to tell your client and act as the expert here of like how many invitations you need to send, or like what are the color schemes that you should be going for, or like that's too much color, that's too little color, or maybe we shouldn't have 3 different custom things in this box, or like the textures are not going to look great together. Like giving like an expert opinion on it will help establish your credibility in it, and it will also help them respect you as well in that process. So personally for me, I definitely explain, or like I propose certain elements such as ordering the right number of extras, like what is a good number of extras just in case they want to add more people to the list, or like keepsakes, or perhaps something gets lost in the mail. So having that in at the back of their heads, that way they know that you know what you're doing and that you're giving them the right amount of feedback, and that way they can trust you in the process as well. And the third do is to set the right expectations. So, and this has to do with a lot of like communication. So like for example, explaining to them the different printing methods and how each thing differs from each other, explaining color and explaining like how different colors on your screen versus printing it out, explaining how like handmade materials, for example, have different nuances to them, that every handmade paper will look different, or like when you have ribbons, for example, that it won't, the color that you see on your screen might not reflect what actually comes in person. So setting the right expectations will really help your client reduce the shock when they actually receive the invites, especially because, for example, for myself, I've mostly been a destination wedding invitation designer, so 99% of my clients I've never met in person, and so for them not to really know how things actually are except for what they've seen digitally is quite a bit of a gap. So in order for you to kind of close that gap, it's so important to be able to set the right expectations. So don't be afraid to be able to share all of that information. So those are my do's. It's a lot of stuff. And then the don'ts is, first is to don't be afraid to take that time to talk all of that stuff, right? It's like the invitation questionnaire might seem really long. This whole meeting could be an hour long, but it's so good to be able to do that. That way you can also reduce having problems once they actually receive the invitations in the future. Second one is to not be afraid to talk about pricing. So pricing is something that is pretty sensitive for a lot of people, and most people have some kind of budgets with their wedding invitations, or at least even if they don't have a budget, that they have a number that they're comfortable spending with it. So it's better that you talk about it rather than not. I actually even have a little bit of conversation on pricing before I even jump on this call, just because I find it really helpful to vet out clients that aren't able to pay for my work. Most people don't know how much invitations should cost. They're just familiar with whatever is, that they could just get on an online website, for example, or that they're used to what some other friends can get. But when you're hiring an invitation designer, especially like a calligrapher, wedding invitation designer, it is considered a luxury item. It's a high-end service versus just like off the shelf, because really what you are is an artist. You are an artist doing custom work. Think about the paintings that you see in the museum. You're sometimes creating the same amount of work that the artists make in those museums, but yet people are not comfortable spending that same amount of money buying this, $10,000 painting. But that could be the amount of price that they will have to spend for their wedding invitation. So you should talk about pricing. So don't be afraid to talk about it, because it is really important to get at least at your minimum, and that way you can provide some options, because like we have more expensive printing methods, we have less expensive printing methods. Maybe your client shouldn't need to go all custom. Maybe a semi-custom invitation would work for them, something like that. There's options to be done, but before we even get to that point, it'll be good to get them at least settled at a comfortable price range that you are offering. So don't be afraid to talk about pricing. And lastly, I would like to say is that don't be afraid to talk about timing, especially because I know some people are scared about giving people expectations on timing, but it's so important to be able to tell them that. Like for example, that printing can take 2 to 3 weeks. Like assembly could just take 1 to 2 weeks. The whole design process, it's okay to give them a big range, because sometimes it has to do with getting them to respond and have the right revisions, and sometimes the getting everybody else's feedback in there can take a bit of time. Don't be afraid to tell them what are the repercussions if we don't follow a timeline. So for example, for myself, once I get booked with my clients, I do give them a work back timeline to tell them what they need to be doing, when do I need things out by. And so if we don't meet these deadlines, what happens? Like, do we need to pay for rush shipping, or like rush design work, or like what can we do in order to make things happen? As I said, a lot of people are usually thinking of invitations towards the latter end of their process, especially with the COVID situation. A lot of people are not sure about whether or not their weddings are even going to happen. And so the invitations tend to get pushed along in the process versus being the first thing that people book. But giving them a good sense of what the timing would be like would be helpful for you, so that if it won't work, then you can do something about it rather than moving forward, and your clients not knowing what to expect. I hope that you can take some of these notes that I've shared today, and put that in your process, because it is so important to be able to communicate to your client. All of this information, these do's and don'ts, as I mentioned, will help elevate you as an expert in this conversation. They are coming to you expecting that you know what you're doing, and it also will help the industry, right? Like, the last thing you want is, for example, like for you to hire somebody and that they're unable, and will help elevate you as an expert in this conversation. They are coming to you expecting that you know what you're doing, and it also will help the industry. It is so good to be able to just have a really good communication path with your clients. So that's my 2 cents, my very long 2 cents of the do's and don'ts of being an invitation designer, especially on the invitation consultation call. I hope you guys learned a thing or two here, and I'll see you guys in another video. Thank you, guys.